Whereas God is inherently, or the real creator force, is inherently expansive. This idea that you have to have a marriage to reproduce. Look at my friend NP. Look at myself. Look at the ways that those of you who are married and who are not married are separated in clout, are separated in ability to be loved as humans, or even if you were way too conservative, to be treated as a human or a child, and how those who have not reproduced, in particular especially, but also those who have just never been married legally, are always outcast, no matter how wealthy or poor, homeless or rich. And those who have been married have become invisible, as J.R.R. Tolkien so masterfully portrayed in his analogy of this ancient system in his films and or books and films. The Lord of the Rings. I think it's really obvious. I don't know. I don't want to make a spoil alert here, but if you haven't seen it or read it, but the Gollum is the dark side of your marriage. I want some comments in the commentary section if you feel anything about that. Let me know what you think. He was showing you again, like I said several videos ago, sometimes popular media does depict the deception, but they have to be slick. So when you encounter fear, when you're making a decision, you must be able to allow yourself to take at least several deep breaths. If not, go into nature or the beach, or go into your car by yourself or some spot away from others to think, to discern. Cannabis can help or hinder because it can make you desire the places and people who have the cannabis as an extremely mentally addictive substance. But it can help you to tune in deeper to what you feel and think. Again, it's very imperative in this time for you to take space to meditate or to clear out your thoughts and to discern the difference between your thoughts and feelings and other people's and the mind control. And this is a very important part of your healing and your shadow work. So I read almost all of Castaneda's works, and he spoke a lot about gut instinct and your intuition, trusting your instinct. They found neurological cells in our hearts, in our gut. And so there was a supplement a while back. It was called, I thought it was adorable of title, for your three brains. For this brain, and this brain. Okay. And I would even venture to say there's intelligence, obviously, reproductive intelligence in your base chakra, your crotch. Okay, so when you make decisions based on fear, it's very easy for you to become reincarnated into the Death Moon Matrix trap machine. If you don't heal that or get better with it, and reincarnated in a lower place. Whereas, say, if you learn how to discern through the equipment that was given to you by the Almighty, your intuition. You see, there's a reason why the ancient men in the shamanic teachings, they emphasize this, when the modern men seem to have a complete negligence, or even people who have smoked tons of cannabis, if they're worried about financial survival, they'll compromise it. They'll not trust their instinct. unless they're extremely clear-headed. And that's why, I always talk about discernment and learning to be clear, because this is something that I can point to. I'm keeping myself from lethal situations due to having this ability and this operational sense of intuition. If somebody gives me the vibe that they're unconscious, or rather evil in their mind or intentions, or totally self-possessed, or totally disrespectful, no matter how much of a con artist or loving they are in other ways, I'll just take note of those feelings, man. I'm not gonna ignore it. I'm not gonna override it because I'm impoverished. I'd rather get my food out of the health food dumpster at 2 a.m. than deal with that shit, honestly. So a lot of times, my Mercury and Capricorn retrograde, people think I was, afraid, or that I was being a hermit overly too much, or lonely or depressed, or but it was because I was in the need to learn on my own, as well as to trust my internal guidance system and say no to situations where I would be intimately involved with tyrants, with disrespectful people, with people who didn't give a rat's ass, because it's just not a good way to learn if you've had as many lifetimes as me. Yeah. So in the end, um, people in the end, they'll learn to not just make New Year's resolutions like the average bear and forget them, but the masters will keep their resolutions, because once you've experienced sinlessness, even for a little while, once you've experienced that level of self-respect, even for a little while, it just seems more obvious that when I say the devil's pathetic, it's like, well, what else could it be? How could it have respect? There's a lot going on behind the scenes. Just like one of my favorite movies that was probably the first movie ever to give disclosure, man. The Wizard of Oz. The first movie they colored. Okay, this movie shows you, similar to the masterful work The Truman Show. It turns out the man who directed and wrote that script for The Truman Show, I believe he lives in New Zealand, so he's technically physically removed a little bit from us here, although New Zealand is a very Illuminati nation, as we have seen in the last several years. So when you realize even a smidgen of what's happening behind the scenes, when you realize even a tiny fraction of what I've told you is happening behind the scenes is accurate information, and that what Dan Willis on his webpage, thewebmatrix.net, and what David Icke have said is not even exaggeration at all. Although David Icke has used the emotional loosh, or, the terrification factor to make millions of dollars, just like with Alex Jones, you could portray them as double agents if they terrify you, but most of their information, if 99% of it is probably accurate, man. Like, they might actually be towing the line of the narrative of what Rothschild or Klaus Schwab says they plan to do. David Icke and Alex Jones might just tell you the same things that the Dark Lord's people say they're going to do to terrify you. And so, they can't have much of a presence on YouTube with millions of followers that they're going to terrify. Okay, that's really why. It's Satan wants you to be a Pollyanna and trust the planned obsolescence. Like I say, I'll take these two slogans from Q and from the mainstream media and combine them. Okay, trust the planned obsolescence. That's what they want you to do. Well, I'm going to tell you the opposite. Trust the inner guidance of the Most High in your third eye, in your heart, in your belly, your instinct, your intuition, and eventually you can trust your base chakra. And on that tip, I have a few stories I wanted to add onto this video on the subject of nonverbal communication or instinctive intuition. I had just learned about physical tantric practice or Taoist teachings of holding the male force in my early 30s. I'm with this crazy dude from LA with the high IQ that was telling me about the movie he's going to make. And we smoke a bowl. And I did put my jacket over my crotch, but I did get a large hard-on as part of my experiment. But what happened is these two 20-year-old girls in bikinis were on paddle boards playing with a couple of bottlenose dolphins, about 50 yards or so in the middle of the Santa Cruz Harbor. So with the full erection, I looked out into the dolphins and I said in my third eye, without saying anything out loud, "All right, swim by me right now," like an order, like a military order. And just within 20 seconds, the dolphins swam over 50 yards and they breached, or they spun out of the water right within 2 yards of where I was sitting on the west cliff. And when that happened, I was pretty well ecstatic with some kind of a high that was not anything like cannabis. It was completely a different feeling than I'd ever had. And this is exactly the kind of thing I want to document here. My experiences with eventually put this together as a book, a small book about learning to use your telepathy. So it was a pretty shocking experience, wow. I actually have telepathic powers. I made these dolphins swim, quite a long ways to jump in the air in front of me. It felt really nice. Another occasion, maybe several years after that, 2015, if you look it up, type in, maybe in Google, September 2015 in Santa Cruz, California. Another occasion, I was taking a week tolerance break off from cannabis. The seventh day, my friend Will was riding by on his bicycle, and I said, I was sunset. I was at Mitchell's Cove at Westcliff, and I said, I would chat with you, but I need to sit down on the bench and meditate here. And he said, enjoy the altered state of consciousness, man. And so I sat down on that bench. And before I began to meditate, within 20, 30 seconds after I started doing some deep breaths, about 4 yards out into the ocean at the most, 10 feet, 20 feet, a whale breached. And it looked like it was smiling at me right in front of the bench. And the most amazing thing about that was far more amazing than that, although that gave me another wonderful high, was it looked like teenage whales were doing tricks and showing off there for about 10 days. 40 people were camped out with their cameras. So look it up, September 2015. It was like a miracle. The whales came to converse with us and to bring in the ascension vibes, communication from the cetacean, the divine whale kingdom. And there was, of course, a lot of food there, minnows. They were feasting out and showing off. And they, of course, were getting contact high from showing off. Subscribe and like and love you, people.